Welcome to Philosophy Vibe. My name is George, and today I am doing my part 2 video on the philosophy tier list. For those who are unaware, last year I released the philosophy tier list video where I ranked 35 different philosophical theories and ideas. If you haven't seen that video, make sure you check it out. But today we're going to continue this endeavour. I have an additional 25 philosophy theories and ideas that I would like to go through. So it's the same ranking list as before, starting at S as the supreme tier, and then A, B, C, D and E, and at the bottom F being the worst rank. So we're going to go through these different philosophical theories and arguments in a bunch of different areas. It will include theories around the philosophy of religion, ethics, metaethics, philosophy of mind, philosophy of perception, political philosophy and more. And we're going to place each of these philosophies on this tier list. Once again, what's going to determine the rank is down to how solid the philosophy is. So how convincing is the argument? How much sense does it make? How well does it hold up to criticism? Now, every philosophy has its criticism, every philosophy has its problems, but of course some theories can be better argued and some theories are more logical, they are better defended against their critiques, and this will determine their higher ranking. Now, to be clear, this is not necessarily me saying you should or shouldn't adopt any of these theories, nor is it me saying I believe or follow any of these philosophies, but it's just down to how good of an argument they are. So let's get started. If we can get the screen sorted, great. And then let's get the 25 theories up there. Thank you, perfect. Okay, so same format as before. I'll give a very brief description of the theories and then I'll place them. Remember, this is just my opinion, so if you disagree with any of the placements, please let me know in the comments below. And before we begin, each of these theories, we have a specific Philosophy Vibe video on. They've been discussed and debated with my friend John. I'll leave the links to each of these below, so if you're unfamiliar with any of these theories or you want to learn more about them, please go and watch the debates. We've spent so much time discussing these philosophies and it's put me in a good position to rank them. So let's get started. Right, which should we start with? Let's start with some philosophy of mind and we'll go with identity theory. So this is a materialist approach to the philosophy of mind. It basically argues that the mind is the brain and nothing more. The mind is not some metaphysical, immaterial entity separate to the body. The mental is the physical. All the magic of the mind, so to speak, are just physical, chemical events, movement of molecules, neurotransmitters, etc. So I probably rank this as a C, a solid C. What I like about this theory is it simplifies philosophy of mind. We're not chasing some metaphysical understanding of the mind. It's all empirical. It explains the mind-body interaction perfectly as there's no interaction per se. It's all body, right? So, and of course, the brain and the mind are inextricably linked. If you damage the physical brain, you as a thinking rational being become severely damaged. So the leap to say the mind is the brain is not that far. But why I just see it as average is because there's so much more to mind states than the physical alone can explain. Identity theory tries to pass brain states as identical to mind states. The brain is spatially located, but mind states aren't. If you, say, feel love or anger, these can't be located in the brain. If you open up someone's brain, you can't see their thoughts. They aren't spatially located, so they cannot be identical. So I don't think it goes far enough in explaining the mind and our perception and our qualia and emotions and all of that. So it stays at a C. Okay, sticking with philosophy of mind, we'll go to logical behaviourism, another materialist theory. This is a reductive materialist theory that argues all mental states can be reduced to physical states, and that is one's behaviour. So to discuss a mental state like I'm happy is nothing more than discussing one's physical state based on behaviour, so smiling, laughing, etc. So all there is the physical body, no metaphysical immaterial mind, and all mental states are reduced to one's physical behaviour. I don't like this theory. I think it's very weak. I'm going to give this an E. I actually think that might be generous, but we'll stick with an E. Basically, this is completely blown out the water when we consider that one's behavior does not correlate with their mental state. One can act as though they are in pain when they are not, or one can be in pain but keep it all in and remain calm on the outside when they're not. Also, reducing all mental states to behaviour is way too simple. It says nothing about the qualia, the subjective experience, what we perceive, how people perceive the same thing but react in different ways. So I'm not a fan of this theory, E grade for me. Next, we'll look into some philosophy of perception and we'll go with direct realism. So this is the idea that the reality we perceive is exactly what exists. We perceive reality directly, so all the objects and their properties are exactly what exist outside our ideas. We have immediate awareness and understanding of the external world. Again, I'm not a fan of this theory. I'm giving it an E, another E on the list. This is so easy to argue against. Anyone who has had an illusion or hallucination knows that the reality we perceive is not consistent. Our senses deceive, our senses can be subjective. We also know that people perceive things in different ways. Perception is not universal. Colour as well is a product of the mind rather than a physical property external to the mind. So this is not a good approach to the philosophy of perception. But sticking with the philosophy of perception, we'll go to indirect realism. Now, I do prefer this theory. I'm giving this a B. This is a much stronger approach to philosophy of perception. So this theory claims we do not perceive the external world directly, we perceive it indirectly. There is an intermediate between the external world and our minds. So there's an object in the external world. We do not have direct access to it, but there is this intermediate, sometimes called sense data. It reflects off the external world and then in our minds, creating our mental image. This explains people's subjective experiences, as everyone will have their own perception, but still a grounding of an objective reality. The reason it can't go further than a B is because ultimately it is trying to explain a reality that it admits it does not have direct access to. And if we only perceive the sense data directly, there is the appeal to idealism, which will argue that we do not even need the physical external world and that reality can just be ideas. Nonetheless, it's a good theory, it's a B. Okay, moving on to our fifth one, let's look at Russell's Teapot, a philosophical argument around the burden of proof. Put forward by Bertrand Russell, he says that if one was to say to you there is a floating teapot orbiting the sun, it cannot be seen or detected, but they believe it's there because the claim cannot be disproved, we wouldn't accept this. Unfalsifiable claims still need evidence, so the burden of proof is on the one making the claim. This then links back to theism and a belief in God. It needs more than just saying God cannot be disproven, you still need actual evidence. I rank this as a C. It's a good argument, it's not that profound, but it's logical, right? Russell does a good job illustrating this. The reason I stick it to a C is because it's used by atheists against theists, but a part of me still thinks the atheistic claim that either the universe came into existence out of nothing or that the universe is actually infinite and never had a beginning, even these claims can fall under Russell's teapot analogy. I do think there is a need for explanation from the atheist, not the agnostic, but if you are committed to the disbelief in God, you still need evidence of the contrary, otherwise the theist and the atheist are in the same boat of error. That's just what I think. Next, we'll go into some political philosophy and we'll focus on Rawls' theory of justice. Okay, a very interesting political philosophy here. It's the setup of a fair and just society where we create it based on the original position, a hypothetical where we do not know who we are and what position of society we're in. Naturally, if this is the case, we would make sure that all people have the most liberty and well-being, and even the least well-off would have a great life, as we don't know our own status or background. We don't know if we are one of the least well-off, so we would want all positions to be desirable. I give this a B. I think it's a good theory. I think Rawls is mostly right in that the original position with the veil of ignorance, as he claims, we would want all positions to be desirable. Right, if you're shaping society and you don't know what class or race or sex you are, you would want to make sure that wherever you land, you would have a good life. However, I don't put it higher, as the veil of ignorance will always be a wishful hypothetical. And realistically, what would it even look like? Would the veil of ignorance mean we also lose our sense of right and wrong, moral and immoral? In which case, how could we even shape a just and fair society? Right, moving on, let's take a look at the Is-Ought Problem by David Hume. Right, here we go people, S tier, the first S tier of the video. This is a great ethical, philosophical problem, also known as Hume's guillotine. It highlights the issues ethicists will always have when trying to come up with ethical theories about how we ought to behave. The argument highlights: how can a natural fact about the world, what is, tell us what ought to be? Hume argued there is a gap in our reasoning. There is a gap between moral knowledge and natural facts. This has stumped ethicists for years and is why there is no universally accepted moral theory. Great argument from Hume, definite S tier. Okay, what's that we've done now? 7. Okay, 7 down. All right, let's carry on. Next, let's go back to philosophy of religion and we'll look at the Augustinian Theodicy. This is an argument trying to explain the problem of evil. So, why is there pain, suffering, and evil if God is all-loving and all-powerful? The Augustinian Theodicy claims it is because humans rejected God with the events of Adam and Eve, and so we chose to distance ourselves through our own free will and brought about the evil in the world. So, the problem of evil is humans' fault, not God. I give this an F. Here we go, first F on the list. It's not really a philosophical theory, it's a religious theory. For it to have any weight, you need to accept biblical events as fact. Even then, there's problems around free will and God's divine foreknowledge, so it's just not a good theory. But, sticking with the problem of evil, let's look at the Irenean soul-making theodicy. I much prefer this as a response to the problem of evil. I'm giving this a C. The idea is that evil is necessary in our world in order to recognize and understand what good is. For there to be tall, we need small. For there to be hot, we need cold. So for there to be good, there needs to be evil. I think that actually makes sense. I do. If we only lived in a world where everything was perfect, would we appreciate it? Also, they call it the soul-making theodicy because suffering is seen as building character, and giving humans obstacles to overcome develops their souls. Which again, there's some truth here. Having problems and challenges and struggles does give life that extra meaning. However, although elements make sense, it can't go higher than a C because there are issues like, why doesn't everyone have an equal amount of suffering in their life? Or do we really need such high levels of suffering and evil to appreciate good? Or why can't God, an omnipotent being, create a world with no evil, but still the appreciation of good? It doesn't solve the problem of evil, but there is some truth there. Moving on, let's look at Mill's liberty. So, this political philosophy looks at the relationship between the individual and the state. John Stuart Mill argued that the state should never be able to interfere in the lives of the individual. The state can only force the individual to act or not act if the individual's actions are harming another. This is known as the harm principle. So, unless there is harm, the individual must always have freedom of speech, character, and action. This is a great philosophy on liberty. For me, this is a definite A tier. It allows us to live free from government tyranny, government intervention. Freedom of speech and character are so important for a free society, and this philosophy really shapes that worldview. Some potential challenges around the harm principle and how narrow we should define harm, but generally, this is a really accurate, desirable relationship between the individual and the state. Okay, let's go back to philosophy of mind and we'll look at substance dualism. So, dualism is the idea that the mind and body are separate. Substance dualism claims that the mind and body are two distinct substances, mental and physical. I always like dualism as a theory, and I think there is a distinction between mind and body, and the two clearly are distinct, like one immaterial, one material. I give this a B. It can't go higher because of the problem of interaction. This has not been sufficiently explained. How does the mind and body interact if they are distinct substances? How does the mind control the body if they're distinct? But a B is fair. And sticking with dualism, we'll then look at property dualism. This version claims that there only exists one property, and that's the physical, but the mind is the non-physical property of the physical properties. So the physical brain creates non-physical properties, and that's the mind. So mind and body are kind of distinct, but ultimately there's just one property, and mental properties are just down to the arrangement of physical properties. I actually rank this lower than substance dualism. I'm giving this a C. On the one hand, it does help solve the problem of interaction, as there's no mind and body really, it's just one property, so we don't have the interaction problem. But on the other hand, I don't see it as a true dualism theory. It just seems more like a reductionist materialist theory. So there's some logic to it, but still I give it a C. Moving on, let's look at the brain in a vat. Okay, a skepticism theory that claims we could, in fact, just be dismembered brains in a vat in some mad scientist's lab, and all our reality is just being projected onto our minds by this scientist. Nothing is real, all of reality is false, just a simulated reality, and we're just a floating brain. Okay, so for me, another F here. This is just a cool skepticism theory, but really, what's the point? We can't know we are not brains in vats, but that's not enough to believe that we are. There's no actual logic used to reach that conclusion other than it just cannot be disproven. It's not like simulation theory or idealism, which come with a lot of logical reasoning. This is just a skeptical theory that says we can never truly know. So it's a bit lazy, there's not much to it, it doesn't have much value as a theory, and in fact Putnam's response to this is a great criticism and shows that maybe we can actually logically prove we are not brains in vats. So yes, F tier for me. Let's go back to some political philosophy and we'll look at Locke's liberalism. So by Locke's liberalism, I mean his social contract and then his liberal political philosophy. I'm a huge fan of this. This is an A tier for me. So Locke's social contract is that the state should not have maximum power. The state should only exist to protect its citizens' natural rights, life, liberty and property. The social contract is that we grant the sovereign limited power to protect our natural rights, and the citizens can then expel the leaders if they fail to hold up to their end of the contract. This for me makes total sense. Again, this society will not have evil dictators or oligarchs or authoritarian government. It gives people freedom, free from government oppression, but still retains the necessary protection we need for society to flourish. I love this theory. The only reason it fails to make the S tier on a philosophical level, there are always challenges and debates around natural rights. Where do they come from? What should be included? And I think the three that Locke chose make sense, but it is open for debate. And then to add that natural rights come from God also comes with more challenges. So from that perspective, it might not make the S tier. Sticking with the social contract, we'll look at Hobbes' version. Now, Hobbes believed humans could quickly descend into barbaric chaos known as the state of nature, so the social contract is actually to give the sovereign complete control, total power, in exchange for protection and order. But Hobbes argued that the state really does have complete power and can do anything it desires as long as it keeps an ordered system. I'm not a fan of this. I give this a D. I get the social contract, it does make sense, and yes, a sovereign is needed to keep the order, but the idea that it has complete control and can do anything is terrifying. Governments, rulers, dictators are all known to have committed atrocities across history, and knowing your state has that much power with no consequences is not a desirable society to live under. So yes, D tier for me. And one more on the social contract, and that is Rousseau's. This is the idea that the people are the sovereign. The people decide on running their society through general assemblies and voting without any selfish desires, and the people have full control of their state and their society. I put this as a C tier. Initially this sounds great, it is a democracy and people have control of their state and of running their society, but as you look into it, it's direct democracy, and this comes with a lot of its own problems. Either the less informed have as much power in shaping their society as the better informed, or the less informed are completely left out and subsequently left behind. Rousseau also has this idea of the legislator to help people vote and be informed, but you can quickly see how this will create another ruling class with state propaganda, so there's a lot of issues with this. It doesn't go higher than a C tier for me. Okay, let's take a look here. I think we've got 9 more to go. Okay, great, 9 more to go. Before we continue, I just wanted to give a quick mention of the Philosophy by Paperback Anthology book set. For those not too familiar with this channel, my friend John and I have spent years discussing and debating loads of different philosophical theories on this YouTube channel. We have compiled the scripts of these videos into 3 excellent books that are ideal for those interested or getting into philosophy. We have Volume 1, The Philosophy of Religion, Volume 2, Metaphysics, and Volume 3, Ethics and Political Philosophy. These books will break down all the core Western philosophical ideas into easily digestible debates. So by the end of reading the 3 books, you will have a really great grasp on a wide area of Western philosophy. So yes, if you are interested in philosophy as a subject, these books are perfect for you. They're all available on Amazon, and I'll put the links below. Okay, let's get back to it. What do we have left? Okay, let's look at some meta-ethics, and we have the Frege-Geach Problem. This is a superb argument that really causes problems for non-cognitivism. It's a great challenge. This is an A tier, yeah, definite A tier. It's a really fascinating language argument. So if the non-cognitivists believe that moral language is not truth-apt and just an expression of emotion, the Frege-Geach problem shows how using moral language in complex sentences as conditionals just completely bewilders and confuses the non-cognitivists. It's a great argument, well thought out, well put together. Yes, it's an A tier. Next, let's go with logical determinism. So here we go, another S tier, second S tier of the video. Determinism is very convincing, but logical determinism is another masterpiece argument using language and logic in favour of determinism. So determinism is the rejection of free will and the belief that all events are determined. Now, logical determinism claims that statements about the future are in fact truth-apt. They are not meaningless, which is a completely reasonable position to hold. But if they are truth-apt, that means they are necessarily true or necessarily false. So if I was to say, tomorrow I will trip over, that statement is truth-apt. It is either true or false. And say that I do trip over the next day, that statement was then true, and that statement has always been true. But if the statement was true before the event took place, it means it was determined. I was determined to fall over on that day. It's such a great argument, really fascinating. I like it a lot. Okay, what else do we have? Let's look at Kierkegaard's Night of Faith, some religious existentialism. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of this theory. It's all about having complete and utter faith in God, to embrace the absurd. Even when all logic and reason are against you, you keep your faith. Or if you long for something there and it seems impossible, you still embrace an absurd faith that God will make it happen. Oh, I think, should I give it I think it's an E tier. I think that might even be generous. No, I'll keep with E. It's not that much of a philosophy. It's just a religious devotion, and it's actually against logic and reason. That's the heart of the theory. It's to embrace the absurd. I think because of that, we'll stick to E tier. Right, so let's go back to philosophy of religion, and we have Pascal's wager theory. Okay, so another F tier. Not a good theory, this is weak. So the wager theory basically does a calculated gamble and believes it is a wiser decision to be religious and believe in God. Pascal reasons that not believing in God and not being religious doesn't have many benefits, but potentially it could have an eternity's worth of pain and suffering. So the wiser gamble or wager is just to believe in God and be religious. But there's so many problems with this theory. Firstly, which religion do you wager on? Is devoting your life to a religion that might be false a waste of your one life? That should be factored into the wager. Also, how do you just believe? Is belief a choice that you can just turn on? Is true faith just a matter of making a decision? And if you are faking it to get into heaven, wouldn't God know? So this is just a weak argument, too many problems, easy to counter-argue. This is an F tier. Moving on, let's look at Hegel's absolute idealism. This is an interesting theory, an interesting take on idealism. So generally, idealism is the belief that ideas make up reality. So Berkeley believed only ideas exist. Reality is all mental ideas. There's no physical external world. Kant believed space and time were ideas and shaped our perception of the external world. Hegel pondered concepts such as cultures, traditions, and societies and said these ideas are not external objects, neither are they subjective ideas. They are shared ideas and they develop a shared spirit within all people across all of time, and this spirit is always evolving and trying to reach the absolute. I'm putting this as a C. It's a really interesting metaphysical theory. The main problems, firstly, Hegel was a terrible writer. He is really hard to understand. So this theory always has people debating over exactly what Hegel means. In addition, the collective spirit trying to reach the infinite is a monist theory, which has its own problems around agency. So I think C is fair. Sticking with metaphysics, we have modal realism. Okay, I love modal realism. I find it so fascinating. It's the idea that there exists an infinite amount of possible worlds whereby every possible truth obtains. It really is mind-blowing. It questions what type of ontological status possible worlds have and reasons that they must be actual concrete worlds where every possible outcome in every possible scenario is played out, an infinite amount of possible worlds with every single possible truth. I really do love it, but what can I think I can only give it a D. This is a wild theory, but there's a lot of challenges, especially around personhood and identity. It's definitely fun to discuss in a philosophy setting, but there is a lot of holes in it. Okay, only 3 left. Let's take Nietzsche's master-slave morality. An interesting concept. It's the moral philosophy that there are 2 types of morality at play in the world. Master morality, which is aimed at the strong and the capable, and good is centered around gaining more power, status, and wealth. And then slave morality. This is aimed at those who are not masters, the herd as Nietzsche called them, the masses who are weaker and poorer. And so their morality functions as the opposite of master morality. They denigrate master morality and see what they cannot achieve as immoral. And their slave morality is around things like humility, forgiveness, and purity. I give this a C. There is some truth to this, in the sense that those who are poorer and weaker can see the stronger as immoral, but if you are stronger and more powerful, you will center your life around amassing more power and wealth. But it's not that straightforward, as there are clearly masters who follow slave morality. I think life is more than just the 2 sides. People are more complicated than just masters and slaves. Some truth to it, but not the full picture. Final 2, let's look at Plato's Republic. So this is a focus on Socrates' perfect city-state. In short, it's the idea that there should be 3 classes of people: the producer class, the general population who work their skill in the city. Then we have the auxiliary class. These are the soldiers who defend the city and police the city. And then we have the guardians. These are the wise rulers, also dubbed as the philosopher kings. They govern the city-state. Now, the guardians lead very restricted lives. They live in a commune together. They cannot have families or personal possessions. The producers are only allowed to practice the skill they specialize in and cannot change this. Your class is chosen for you at a young age based on your ability and skills. The idea is everyone will be doing what they do best and the city would function perfectly. Now, I don't like this. I give this a D. I would hate to live in this city. No freedom, rigid class system, and a ruling class that lead really fake sheltered lives. I think people would be miserable and it would completely fail. There's some wisdom here when you pick it apart, but the fact is it's so absolute and strict, I think it would ruin the city and the people inside. So it's a D for me. And last on the list, final one, here we go, Nozick's Entitlement Theory of Justice. Some see this as the philosophy of free market capitalism. It argues for a minimal government with minimal intervention into the private dealings of free individuals and their wealth creation. Nozick argues there should be 3 principles to govern people's private property in a functioning society. It's just acquisition, so acquiring unowned property, not by force but by your labour. Just transfer, this is the mutually agreed transfer and trade of products with others, and just rectification, punishing those who acquire property unjustly. This is the blueprint of a free market society with a minimal government needed. I think I'll put this as a C tier. Yeah, I think that's fair. There is truth to the free market concept, and initially allowing the most freedom for people to trade justly acquired property makes complete sense and would be the best approach for a flourishing society. However, when you look closer, you do see the cracks. The threat of monopolies always exists, and Nozick tried to overcome it with the Lockean proviso and rules around leaving enough and as good for others. But then this just means a bigger government is needed after all, so it seems to defeat its own minarchist grounding. So yeah, it can't go further than a C. And that's it. There we go. Another 25 philosophical theories and ideas ranked. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if there are any rankings you disagree with, or you think I've been too harsh or too generous with any of these philosophies, please let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in learning more about any of these theories, we have debates on each of these on the channel. I've listed each video below. And remember, if you want to study these theories more, you can purchase the Philosophy Vibe Paperback Anthology book set, a great overview of Western philosophy. The books are available on Amazon and the links are below. And of course, you'll be really helping to support this channel. Finally, don't forget to like and share. And for more philosophical content, please subscribe to the channel. Take care, and I'll see you all soon.